Okay, today we're moving stuff from the old motor, which has now been freed up, but that's a completely different story. We're moving stuff over. We're doing the changeover, valve cover, injector rail, the water pump, checking to make sure the knock sensor is the right one. I changed the PVC valve because the other motor had this style on it. Yes, that's purple, and that's that. But this is the wrong style to go with my setup. I believe this is the next generation. This is second, and this is third, and there's a first generation. So I'm just doing the tedious parts, you know, cleaning up the water pump, getting all the grime off of it, and I'm gonna reshoot this in black, put it back on. You check to make sure your oil filter's the same, your pressure sensor and all that, and make sure all of this is where the AC compressor bolts to, these three here. Make sure that's all right, and this is a knock sensor. It needs to be hooked back up after the intake manifold goes on. And this is where your thermostat housing bolts to. Make sure it's clean and all that stuff. And here's where the oil pump, your power steering pump will bolt to. And the motor I got had, from the salvage yard, this valve cover was busted and broken on it, so I didn't need it, so I just threw all the crap out of it. But somebody had smashed it with a hammer and stuff and created a bunch of metal debris, a bunch of plastic debris, and then of course the innumerable oil in the spark plug holes, which is completely normal. This is the back side. This is the exhaust manifold side. So your alternator will bolt. Your alternator goes right here with this stud and a bolt here, and the alternator mounts here. And then the back side of the motor, this is your exhaust manifold. This is your exhaust manifold mounting surface. So cylinder 1, 2, 3, 4. And then this is the port that goes through the other side for your EGR valve. Exhaust gas relocation. Yeah, you like my motor pullers? Yes, those are seatbelt straps. Yes, they're rated for that much weight. It's not that much. This is your EGR valve. And when this valve opens, it allows the gas to come back through here, which this is the intake manifold side. So go back into the motor. So, yeah, that's all that. This surface I'm going to have to clean, because that is completely messed up. I'm going to have to clean all this up to where it's nice and shiny to mount the gasket to. And all of this seepage is from the valve cover gasket. There's the bolt you have to take out to do your crank pulley service. Here's the crank position sensor. It reads off this tone ring. See these valleys and peaks? Yeah, that's that. And this is where your harmonic, that's the crank. This is where your tensioner goes. This is where the idler pulley goes. And this is where the motor mount the engine side mount goes. That's the water pump. You have an alternator, a pulley, the tensioner, idler pulley, power steering pump up here, AC compressor down here. That's it. And then the bolts to bolt the engine to the transmission. One there, one there, one there from this side. And then in the bottom, there's two from the other side. This one and this one. And a bolt goes through here. There's the bolt that goes through. That's your dipstick. Then of course this rubber comes out and it gives you access to the flywheel. And I've got to set the flywheel to match the other motor, so when I put it back together, everything's right. But bolt from here. These are your two starter bolts, and yes, they have pins on them. You just set your starter on the pins, and it stays put. You put the bolts in it. Your other intake, from the transmission side, from the transmission side, from the transmission side. And now I'm doing this because there wasn't a lot of information on how to do this stuff. And then of course you can see the water pump through the outlet hole for the thermostat. And the thermostat seats against this. So, whatever. Here's the knock sensor. So yeah, now we're doing all the little fiddly bits to get the motor together today. It's Mother's Day. So yeah, here's another water pump. This is the water pump for this. These are 10 millimeter. There's 3 of them. And these are 8 millimeter. There's 3 of them, as you can see. And I believe it goes... You have to jack the motor up, and it goes like that with the other one. I gotta get this sensor out. So yeah. Ford Focus 2 liter.